Coming up in our newscast tonight. The nation's ruling party and the government meet for talks on providing greater support to low-income earners. Discussions are also held on ways to soften the potential repercussions of the minimum wage hike. Continued progress in improving inter-Korean ties. A cross-border military communication channel cut several years ago is back online, a move expected to ease tensions and build trust. Once again, athletes from Seoul and Pyongyang compete as teammates, this time in an international table tennis tournament held in South Korea. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang NEWSCENTER. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. We begin with the minimum wage hike issue. The nation's ruling party and the government met to gauge the impact of the move as well as other potential risks to the local economy. Also discussed during the talks measures to improve the lives of the most vulnerable in the society. Kim Min-ji has our top story.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the government are seeking a set of measures aimed at supporting people in the low-income bracket. The meeting between the two sides, which took place Tuesday, comes amid controversy over next year's almost 11% hike to the minimum wage, on top of the 16% increase this year. There are concerns that rather than helping the vulnerable, the wage hike actually puts a burden on small businesses due to increased labor costs, which has led to part-time workers losing their jobs.
There have been disputes regarding the minimum wage hike, but there's no doubt it will create a sustainable society by increasing the incomes of the most vulnerable. The government needs to be at the forefront to win the understanding of labour circles, the self-employed and small business owners. It also needs to quickly come up with measures to help low-income earners.
The party and the government have agreed to do this by firstly expanding the number of people eligible for earned income tax credit, a program that entails tax refunds for low-income households, as well as by raising financial support. The two sides also agreed to increase the basic pension for elderly people in the lowest 20% bracket to roughly $260 a month by next year, 2 years earlier than originally planned. Also in the package are employment subsidies for young people entering the job market for the first time, as well as job creation measures for senior citizens. The government is expected to unveil a comprehensive plan on Wednesday.
We'll work to expand the social safety net of those in the low-income bracket, as well as carry out reforms so that innovation can be seen across the economy. At the same time, we'll step up fiscal measures and preemptive action against internal and external risks.
The two sides also said they will soon come up with follow-up measures regarding the minimum wage hike. In the meantime, the ruling party also vowed all-out efforts to pass related bills, while the government has promised to draw up policies that bring about tangible changes the people can feel. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
There's been fierce opposition to the pay hike. The decision is in line with President Moon's election pledge, and it's designed to help improve lives. But the questions are raised regarding its effectiveness due to adverse repercussions of the sudden change. According to our Oh Soo-young, both young part-timers and small businesses are reeling from the impact.
27-year-old Im Seung-on has been working part-time jobs for the last 7 years, mostly at restaurants and convenience stores. The 16.4% minimum wage hike this year meant he was taking home an extra $90 a month compared to last year. But he says the raise came at a price.
Some employers expect much more from us, more input, looking more cheerful in front of customers. After the wage hike, my former employer at a convenience store explicitly asked 2 of us to cover work that 4 people used to do. I had no choice but to accept the situation while looking for other jobs.
At the same time, Im says he understands his former employer's concerns. Small business owners who mostly rely on part-time workers have opposed the government's decision to raise the wage floor by 10.9% next year. They say it's hard to keep their businesses afloat, with labour costs expected to rise further throughout President Moon Jae-in's term.
I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't possibly cut more jobs. I've already been taking over my workers' shifts. I work about 10 to 12 hours a day now. 14 some days. Many of us convenience store owners are barely making as much as our part-time employees.
A survey shows 30% of convenience store owners have taken on at least 5 hours of extra shifts a week to keep the costs down. Now, 4 in 10 store owners work more than 12 hours a day. Some have simply decided to close their shops earlier than they used to. The trend has caused concern among economists.
Well, in terms of the profit of small business enterprise, I think at least a 20% decline in the profits, and about the 30% decline in general sales. And also, the decline in the general sales is because many shop owners decided to kind of shorten their working hours. So generally, small business enterprise will be tremendously affected by that. And because of that, I think there will be a lot of unemployment for the kind of part-timers as well.
On Tuesday, Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun admitted the wage hike would take a toll on small businesses and pledged that the government would find soft landing solutions. However, he said other factors like high rent and franchise fees are the main reasons for their financial troubles. Economists and small shop owners have called for government action to tackle these issues, as well as apply a different minimum wage rate for businesses that employ 5 workers or less. Seoul, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now. Today, Koreans celebrate the 70th anniversary of the nation's constitution. A special ceremony to mark the occasion was held in Parliament earlier this morning. Choi Young-ae has the highlights from the event, attended by top lawmakers across the aisle and senior government officials.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang says he wants to reach a consensus in Parliament on revising the Constitution by the year's end. Speaking Tuesday at an event marking the nation's 70th Constitution Day, the Speaker stressed that a revision is what the people want and that he will bring the rival parties together to agree on a framework.
The National Assembly must answer the call of the people who are demanding a revision. By carrying out the people's demand, we move towards a whole new Korea. We complete the candlelight revolution and restore the people's trust.
The Speaker said that the nation's political awareness has reached a new level of maturity and that the time is more than ripe to shed old clothes and change into new ones. The presidential office and the ruling Democratic Party of Korea had hoped to hold a referendum to amend the constitution in June, but discussions in Parliament stalled over the timing and content, not to mention partisan wrangling. On top of that, the opposition refused to vote on a proposal submitted by the president himself. Moon added that the current constitution, which was last amended in 1987, has served its mission of securing direct presidential elections. But he pointed out that the current power structure gives the president too much authority and invites habitual political standoffs. He went on to say that the divide between the rival parties is not so big in view of all the discussion that's already taken place in the National Assembly, and that if lawmakers approach the issue with sincerity, an agreement can be struck. Choi Young-ae, Arirang News.
Staying with the topic of the nation's constitution, we now turn the spotlight to how it's been revised over the years. While looking back at the changes, our Kim Mo-kyun helped gauge whether we will see a promised 10th Amendment anytime soon.
7 decades ago today, South Korea formally adopted its first constitution. It has been amended 9 times since then, with each revision reflecting the nation's footsteps towards democracy. Past revisions focused on the nation's power structure. In 1972, Korea's former President Park Chung-hee changed the constitution to allow indirect presidential elections, and in 1980, the constitution was revised to adopt a 7-year single-term presidency under then-President Chun Doo-hwan. But through the June Democratic Movement in 1987, the dictatorship came to an end, and the constitution was once again revised to allow direct presidential elections and a 5-year single-term presidency. Korea has been observing the 9th revision of the Constitution for the past 30 years. Its basic principles center on the sovereignty of the people, the separation of power, and the pursuit of peaceful unification of the 2 Koreas. Lately, there have been calls for a 10th revision, and President Moon Jae-in had expressed hopes that the process could have been held alongside the local elections in June. But opposition from numerous lawmakers meant the plan was scrapped.
With the societal changes that have occurred over the past decades, such as the development of IT and issues concerning low birth rate and an aging society, public demand for the revision has been strong, as many want to directly participate in creating a new constitution.
In Korea, any constitutional revision requires the support of more than 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly before it can be put to a national referendum. But according to experts, with the current distribution of parliament, prospects for a constitutional amendment in the near future don't seem too bright. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The inter-Korean military hotline in the West Sea, cut more than 2 years ago, is now completely restored, all thanks to an agreement reached by Seoul and Pyongyang during a general-level cross-border talks last month. Park Ji-won gets us up to speed with the developments.
South Korea's Defense Ministry announced Tuesday that the West Sea military communication channel was restored as of Monday, some 29 months since it was severed in February 2016, following the shutdown of the inner Korean Kaesong industrial complex. All functions of the line, including phone and fax functions, are working as normal. The Defense Ministry said the restoration would contribute to the easing of inner Korean tensions on the border and build trust between South and North. During last month's general-level inter-Korean military talks, the two Koreas agreed to reconnect the military communication line on the peninsula, and South Korea provided the North with the necessary equipment for the communication line's restoration, following procedures set during the working-level inter-Korean military talks that were held towards the end of last month. The Defense Ministry's spokesperson told Arirang News Tuesday afternoon that the list of equipment sent to North Korea for the restoration of the military cable was closely discussed with the UN Security Council and the U.S. to make sure the offering of the equipment didn't violate current international sanctions on Pyongyang. The spokesperson also said the two Koreas plan to reconnect the East Sea communication line destroyed in a wildfire, following working-level inter-Korean discussions in the near future, although no specific dates for the talks have yet decided. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
While pushing to expand and increase exchanges with the North, Seoul's Unification Ministry vowed to keep in touch with the international community to ensure no such effort violates sanctions imposed on the regime. Plus, there are plans to push for revision of some laws to make sure inter-Korean activities don't come to an abrupt halt again. For details, let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee.
Seoul will continue to expand inter-Korean exchanges and cooperation, but will make sure things remain within the framework of international sanctions, especially when it comes to railways, roads, and forestation projects. That's according to an unnamed official from South Korea's Unification Ministry on Tuesday. In a series of talks a few weeks ago, the two Koreas agreed to cooperate in linking and modernizing railways and roads, as well as conducting forestation projects in the north. For railways and roads, Seoul and Pyongyang agreed to begin with joint field inspections because bringing South Korea's resources and equipment into North Korea for construction could violate international sanctions. The Unification Ministry says forestation projects, too, could be a breach of sanctions. For example, setting up water control systems at tree nurseries. If the projects go so far as to involve technology transfers, the official says, South Korea will discuss these matters with the international community and the United States to make exceptions. He added that the North is well aware of the sanctions, and the two Koreas go through detailed discussions at their talks, taking the sanctions into account to arrive at an agreement. Meanwhile, Seoul will be making some legal changes as well to make sure inter-Korean interactions move forward steadily. Discussions will begin at South Korea's National Assembly on revising the Inter-Korean Exchange and Cooperation Act. One of these changes will be that when inter-Korean projects have to be restricted or prohibited, a cabinet meeting will have to be held, just to make sure decisions are made a little bit more prudently than when the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex was abruptly shut down in February 2016. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Up north of the border, Kim Jong-un lashed out at officials and workers at a construction site. The regime's leader was upset over long delays in completing a power plant. Kim also harshly criticized his own cabinet for not working hard enough. Park Hee-jun has more on the gesture that reflects his determination to improve the Hermit Kingdom's economy.
North Korean officials were apparently not working diligently enough on an important construction project because what they got recently from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was a harsh and public rebuke. The country's state-run Korean Central News Agency aired numerous reports Tuesday of Kim visiting factories, construction sites, and farms to give field guidance to on-site workers and officials. At a power plant under construction in the country's northeast, Kim reprimanded workers for being incompetent and irresponsible. The KCNA says he also scolded them for not working hard. He was reportedly furious that they had not inspected the site for years and that they had failed to keep him informed or let him know about the critical measures needed for the plant to be finished. The plant has been under construction for 30 years and was ordered to be finished by October. Kim also inspected a holiday camp and called the hot spring baths worse than fish tanks. At a resort under construction, he told off laborers for their sloppy work. It's rare to see Kim Jong-un speaking so harshly on his field guidance visits. Earlier this month, though, Kim visited 2 factories and criticized officials for poor building maintenance, a lack of expertise, and other problems. It's believed these inspections reflect Kim's determination to achieve his 5-year economic development plan due to be completed in 2020. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
The curtain is raised for the 2018 International Table Tennis Federation Korea Open. During the 6-day tournament, athletes from 28 countries will compete for a total prize pool of $266,000. Qualification rounds and under-21 games are on through the first 2 days. Once the seedings are set, the main tournament begins Thursday. Seoul and Pyongyang's unified squad will take part in the men's, women's, and mixed doubles. This marks only the 3rd time the 2 Koreas formed a joint table tennis team. The maiden experiment dates all the way back to the 1991 World Championships. Judging by the process and the outcome, such team-ups proved to be very productive. Hong Yu explains further.
Nervous but smiling, the North Korean table tennis players landed in South Korea on Monday. They are taking part in the 2018 International Table Tennis Federation World Tour Platinum Korea Open, which starts today. And in that tournament, South and North Korea will participate as a joint team. This is the 3rd time that the South and North Korean players have played on the same side of the table since 1991. But it is the 2nd time this year after the 2018 World Table Tennis Championships. Table tennis was the first sport that the 2 Koreas formed a joint team in. And in their first tournament, the World Table Tennis Championships in 1991, the joint team stunned the Korean peninsula by winning a gold medal in the women's team event against the favorites China. North Korean Lee Bun-hee and South Korean Hyun Jung-hwa had only met before on opposite sides of the table, but their teamwork made such a result possible. The friendship that Lee and Hyun had developed later became the theme of the movie As One. Hyun, now the coach of the joint team, said in an interview with Yonhap that she is looking forward to meeting with Lee again in the near future. But this time, the attention will be focused on Seo Yoo-won from South and Kim Song-hee from North, who are participating in the women's team event. It is their first time playing in a team event, but South and North Korea recently played as a joint team in the World Table Tennis Championships in May. The joint team won 3rd place in that tournament, and Coach Hyun hopes that this team plays well in this tournament just like they did in the previous ones so they can make many Koreans happy. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
A new head of the National Human Rights Commission of Korea is nominated by President Moon Jae-in. Choi Young-ae, the chief director of Women's Human Rights Defenders, a non-profit organization seeking to improve rights for both South and North Korean women, is tapped to direct the human rights watchdog. She is also the current chair of the Human Rights Commission of Seoul. The announcement comes amidst growing public demand to better protect the rights of women and minorities. Choi will be formally appointed after a parliamentary confirmation hearing. The leaders of Washington and Moscow sat down to talk about a number of global issues, including North Korea. President Vladimir Putin praised his American counterpart's efforts on denuclearizing the regime, while Donald Trump welcomed close cooperation with Russia in solving the matter. Kim Yo-sun shares with us what was discussed during the summit.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin sat down for a one-on-one meeting on Monday in Helsinki. The 2 leaders held private talks for nearly 4 hours in the Finnish capital, touching upon a wide range of issues, including trade, nuclear arms, and China. The denuclearization of the Korean peninsula was one of their key agenda items. President Trump said he briefed his Russian counterpart on the results of the first-ever North Korea-U.S. summit held in Singapore last month.
We also discussed one of the most critical challenges facing humanity, nuclear proliferation. I provided an update on my meeting last month with Chairman Kim on the denuclearization of North Korea, and after today, I am very sure that President Putin and Russia want very much to end that problem, going to work with us, and I appreciate that commitment.
Putin hailed Trump's efforts in settling the North's nuclear issue.
It's good that the issue of the Korean Peninsula started to resolve gradually. To a large extent, it became possible because President Trump personally got involved into the settlement, building the dialogue in the spirit of cooperation and not confrontation.
The two leaders also said Washington and Moscow must find ways to cooperate in the pursuit of shared interests. Following the summit aimed at resetting the two countries' frosty relations, President Trump said their bilateral ties, which have never been worse, had changed for the better as of about several hours ago. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
The nation's foreign ministry expressed regret over Japan's recent revision of its teaching manual. Earlier today, Tokyo's education ministry posted a guide for instructors to teach Korea's Dokdo as Japanese territory from next year, 3 years earlier than originally planned, stressing that the island is Korean territory historically, geographically, and under international law. Seoul views this act as an unwillingness of Japan's government to reflect on its past mistakes and proceed to a new future. The foreign ministry added Korea won't tolerate any provocations over the easternmost islets and called on its neighboring country to immediately withdraw the plan. This afternoon, over in the southeastern city of Pohang, a Marine Corps helicopter accident took 5 lives. According to South Korea's defense ministry, the amphibious vehicle carrying 6 passengers crashed from about 10 meters above ground level during its test flight. 5 out of 6 on board were killed at the scene. 1 person was injured and sent to a hospital nearby. The military will look into the exact cause of this accident. The mercury shot up all the way to 32 degrees Celsius in the capital, 36 in Daegu. Korea has been experiencing highs in the 30s for several days in a row now. According to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, from July 12th to the 15th, the scorching weather took 2 lives. More than 280 others reportedly suffered from heat-related illnesses. Going back to mid-May, the heat wave has killed 4 people in total. And that's not all. The Agriculture Ministry says more than 790,000 farm animals have died from the heat since the end of last month. That would translate to more than $3.7 million in damage. The Korea Meteorological Administration warns the sizzling conditions will continue until next week. Even when the sun goes down, there's little relief as temperatures do not dip below 25 during tropical nights. Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, the hottest year on record in Korea was 1994 when temperature exceeded 33 degrees Celsius for over a month. The second hottest was 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, and the experts are saying this summer might be a record-breaking one.
That's right, Daniel. It's correct. In fact, when it's this hot, we usually get torrential rain that comes and cools us down, but it's been a week and there's no sign of any precipitation. And today, being Chobok in Korea, one of the first hottest days of the year, is steaming out there and heat wave warnings have also spread. Tomorrow is going to be just as hot as today, and there will be high UV levels also. Beijing and Tokyo are no different heat-wise, but Beijing has rain in the forecast. Now, it'll even be hot in the mornings, for beginning the day at 24 degrees Celsius and similar or hotter across the country. And there's about 10-degree jump by noon, so we're reaching up to 34. Gwangju and Daegu way hotter at 36 and 37 degrees respectively. No sign of it getting any cooler. In fact, by next week, it's going to get even hotter with constant tropical nights, which is when the lows don't fall below 25 degrees Celsius. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thanks for staying with us.